Welcome to Pop the Red Pill, a podcast about truth and all things parental alienation. We are here to lift the veil.
And if you enjoy the content of our podcast today, please like, comment, and subscribe by hitting the button below.
My name is Kim McCord, and this is my co-host Karen Belcourt. Our topic today is financial fraud, finding hidden assets in divorce. When dealing with divorce cases, particularly where parental alienation has taken root, we find the patterns of behavior consistent to include financial fraud. Any disordered parent who would poison a child's mind has no boundaries, guilt, or conscience, making financial fraud just another part of their divorce antics. Current studies today show that 73% of all divorces are initiated by women. The information you will hear today is essential if you or anyone you know is contemplating divorce.
Our guest today is John Quirk, a consulting investigator on assets, who has located and recovered millions of dollars for his clients in some of the world's most secretive banking havens. As president of Asset Location and Recovery International, John offers litigation support for divorce cases and issues of family matters, especially in locating and recovering marital assets. Welcome, John.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
We're happy to have you. So, John, we'll start off with this question. What percentage of your clients are women versus men? And why do you think that is?
Well, it's interesting. 95% of our clients are women, and there's several reasons for it. We didn't plan it that way. We didn't try to market to family lawyers or divorced women to try to build up that database. It happened for several reasons. One, in the society that we live in, traditionally men have controlled money. They've controlled the checkbook, the balance sheet. If they work in a business, they've collected that type of information, and that's the way they have controlled the situation, taken care of the family. But when it morphs into divorce, it makes the woman the victim, almost always the victim, and the man in control of not just the money, but the documents that are needed to prove that the man has the money. The second reason, I think, is that over the years, the failure of the system has been really designed against women. It's been in favor of men. And the reason for that is that not only do men control the assets, like I just mentioned, but men have gone out of their way, sometimes with co-conspirator lawyers, to start to commit not just typical civil complaints in divorce, such as contempt. You get angry and you can, when the husband doesn't turn over documents, you charge him with contempt or fraudulent transfer. But it's getting worse than that. It's going into what Kim said originally, financial fraud. And financial fraud, at one time, you would never think of financial fraud in divorce. You think of divorce of two people separating. The litigation continues for a while. It ends, the judge makes a decision, and there's decisions on either alimony, child support, paying the children's tuition. But what's happened more and more, there is financial fraud to completely abandon the women financially, abandon often the children financially, and crimes are committed. And you have to look at the various crimes that are committed in divorce cases that go above contempt and fraudulent transfer.
That's a great answer, John. And we're going to get into the actual charges a little bit later. John, can you give us your top 3 recommendations for women who suspect their ex-spouses of hiding assets during a divorce?
Yeah, I think what I've seen over the years is that many women, because of women's intuition, I don't want to get into psychological issues, but I believe there is women's intuition, and women usually find out one way or another. Even when they find out, they're often in denial. The woman's job is to protect the children and the family. The man is starting to cheat with a secretary, a nanny, a family friend, whatever the reason is, and a woman's intuition kicks in. The second thing would be financial. The man becomes more cryptic about what was traditional family affair financial matters. Doesn't want to discuss the 401k, doesn't want to discuss a joint account where they were investing in the stock market, doesn't want to explain charges on the American Express card especially, doesn't want to explain dinners or trips and so on and so forth. And I think the third thing that could come about is the actual hostility of the man. And that can be, you talk about parental alienation. It's the beginning stages of parental alienation where they're trying to either bribe the kids, pit the kids against the mother, doing subtle things. And it's not that the woman is stupid. It's not that the woman is totally in denial. The woman's job is to keep the family together. It's a moral consideration more than a financial consideration. The man is already thinking that he's going to possibly get divorced, so he has to hide his assets. And what I usually tell people, especially what happens to women, the man looks at it this way. I'm going to have another overhead. I've got a girlfriend probably, or maybe I have issues with my company, but I'm going to have another overhead. I'm going to have legal bills in the divorce. She may have legal bills. I'm going to have, if I move out or she moves out, electric, water, insurance, probably 15 different kind of home affair issues that the woman starts to see cracks in that relationship that she had in the beginning. So I'm not an expert on it, but those are kind of the things that I see happening between a woman and a man when the divorce starts.
So John, I guess one of the things that women have to really take into account is they need to know what's going on during the marriage about all financial affairs. They need to make it their business to know.
Yes, I think that's right. And I think the women that I see that are very smart are good spies. All of a sudden, they start to look at the financial areas. They go to the computer and get the username and password. They look at the checkbook. They do all those things. And sometimes they kind of go astray and they want evidence of the paramour. Maybe they bug his car. Maybe they hire an investigator to follow him. Where I think what they should be doing more of, we're talking financial fraud, they should be focusing more on liquid assets, because usually in a lot of the cases over the years, the man has a greater ability to make money, the woman does not. So she becomes like a double victim. She's going to get divorced. He's going to take care of the money with probably the lawyers and the very overheads. But in the end, he's going to wind up winning one way or another. He's going to get the children on his side if he uses money. He's going to have more money because he's going to have, even if he has another overhead or a girlfriend and trades in one set of problems for another, he's going to have other problems. But the woman really becomes victimized in the total asset position. So going back, it's very good. It's a big advantage if the woman can spy and obtain, almost turn herself into a financial intelligence officer. Even though she doesn't want the divorce or she's still in denial, he's really has a tremendous advantage over her if she doesn't have financial information.
Mm-hmm.
Where do we sign up?
Yeah, it's a brutal system. You hire a lawyer, you get involved, you wind up trusting the lawyer, you learn that the system, even though you have a good lawyer, doesn't always work in your favor. And if you start off in the beginning, being a good spy, trying to get financial information, that helps you a lot during the whole process because, you know, money's a way of life for all of us. We have to have money, else you can't survive in any kind of society. And the person you loved in the beginning in your youth often turns into a monster when it comes to money.
Well said.
That's a really good point about focusing on the financial situation in your marriage while you are married, because unfortunately as women, we always focus on the children. So when the divorce begins, we are completely focused, generally speaking, on the children. And had I known then what I know now, I should have focused on the finances, because that is the trump card, literally, for men, and particularly men that are committing alienation of the children. The money is used to buy the children off.
If you take a social science approach and you designed a circle, and let's say you had 25% when the divorce starts of what you feel could happen in parental alienation, you have 50% in finances, and you have, say, 25% in a term I'll use in addition to financial fraud or parental alienation, and that's marginalization. The marginalization of the wife begins before the divorce, and she's marginalized in several ways. With the children, i.e. parental alienation, I'm not an expert on that. Financial issues, I am an expert on that. That's another marginalization. And then there's a whole area of emotions and misinformation that the court gives you, that the lawyer gives you, your own lawyer, because you're focused on taking care of the children and you're focused on the hope that you're going to get a good settlement. 9.5 out of 10 cases, the man is brutal. Okay, he becomes a monster. The person that you met, and I don't want to go out of my way to criticize men, but I'm just giving you the total of all the cases I've seen. When it comes to money, he forgets about romance and love. He forgets about the children, taking them to the soccer games. He's only interested in money. And the outside pressures for him would be the new girlfriend or the new wife, would be the new overheads of legal bills, the overheads of paying insurance. And it's easy to abandon the children's divorce. That's a big ticket item. He just says, I'm not going to pay it. And then why should I pay the legal bills? Why should I pay her legal bills? And after it goes on, I've seen horrific things where a person that you've been married to 25 years, you basically kick her out of your house or apartment. She winds up with nothing. I'm talking about on the verge of homelessness, even if you have substantial revenue. So all of those things can be avoided in the beginning, and most lawyers don't advise that. They don't get into those type of things. So the woman really has to be a Viking. She has to be a warrior, a financial warrior. And if she's a financial warrior, a lot of these issues of parental alienation, marginalization, worried about homelessness can truly be avoided if she does the right things in the beginning.
So Don, what are the key red flags to watch out for if women do suspect financial fraud is taking place in their divorce proceedings?
Yeah,
or like you said before.
Yeah, I just finished a case in Texas in which a very wealthy dentist he sold his company and started hiding money. It's all about usually cash. People panic and they think, well, if I go to divorce and they ask me for financials, I've got to have extra money, but they can trace money. They can trace money to, they can hire a guy like John Quirk and he can trace my money to Wyoming or Bermuda or the Bahamas or Switzerland. So you know what? The best thing to do is I'm going to cash money in. So if he is a working guy and not a professional person, he starts cashing small amounts of money in. Cash starts going out of the family checkbook into cash. That's one thing. If he has larger amounts of money, he doesn't tell the spouse this at all. He just says, hey, I'm making investments. Don't worry about it. We're going to be okay. Another lie. And he's moving money to Bermuda or Switzerland. And the third thing is, believe it or not, one of the telltale signs is bribing the children. You see, the children between, let's say, 7 years old and 21 years old, I'm not a psychologist, but their brains really aren't developed. They want mom, they want dad, but all of a sudden dad is doing things that I want him to do that mom may not want him to do. New roller skates, new lacrosse sticks, new trips. Sure, honey, you can go to spring breaks. Sure, you can do this. And the mother is starting to be, again, I use the term marginalized. So I would say cash, possibly moving money overseas, and what I call, maybe it's too harsh, I call it bribing the children. So it's marginalizing the woman in the family. And it's a very subtle, slow process. The woman knows it's happening, but she doesn't want to cause trouble because there's already arguments in the family on different topics. So usually, because the woman she becomes a victim right away, and the system, there's nothing in the system. There's no, you have this guardian ad litem that comes in, and that person can be a problem, a real pain in the butt. And it's another stress on the mother actually trying to take the kids away or influence the kids. There's no real ombudsman for divorced women, or you could have ombudsman in a divorce situation for the men and the woman to bring up some of these things that you're asking, Karen, and what Kim is asking and what I'm explaining. It's something that has been falling through the cracks, and I see it more and more and more as I get into divorce situations where the woman has been completely victimized.
Mm-hmm. John, you're absolutely right. And I think that there needs to be a book written by mothers that go through these kinds of divorces called I Was Traded In for a Louis Vuitton Purse.
Right.
We'll get on that tomorrow.
Yeah. Now, I've also seen it to a certain extent in men, but it's usually, how do I say it? It's men that are a little softer, men that are maybe a little weaker, or men that are a little bit more caring and human, and you have a spouse, a female, take advantage of the other side. But here's where she always wins against the man, especially if I'm being too hard on men here.
Oh, you're not.
She's being a financial investigator. She has the advantage over the man. She says, I know where you put the stock money. I know where you put the cash. You're not going to do it anymore because I've gone to the bank and I've closed the accounts in my name. And those women usually I'm not saying they're totally unvictimized, but in the end, they usually get a better settlement. Mm-hmm. They cut the guy off at the knees.
Right. So what you're saying is really knowledge is power, and your financial knowledge of what's going on in the marriage, whether it be husband or wife, should be known by both.
Yeah, I mean, I've read a couple of the books you recommended on parental alienation, which I really didn't know anything about. And there are some points in those books about what we're talking about now. The problem seems to be women are overwhelmed with so many different issues in the beginning of the divorce. They got married, they wanted to get married. The whole idea that the woman initially singles out the man, seeks the man. romance, family is very important. I'm not saying it's not important to men, but when the men get control of the money, the finances, and they marginalize even gradually the woman is always in a bad position.
Mhm. You're right, John. And I think the other thing to take note of is, especially in these cases that you see, by the time a case has actually gone to court, you know that you're probably dealing with a personality profile that's dark. Because most healthy minded parents, when you go through a divorce, you are able to go through mediation, settle these things outside of court. So by the time these cases are coming to court, you know there's some very severe personality disorders at play. For sure, one, if not two.
Yes. And the challenge is that, like you were saying earlier, John, you know, the women are so focused on caring for the children, taking care of the family as well, and sometimes, you know, a full-time career also, but we're so focused on taking care of people, we don't know how to protect ourselves against the narcissistic abuse, and then when we get into court, the legal abuse.
Well, you know what I say, I call it the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde approach from the financial area. Okay, I've heard this from women and men when they get into court. Man, it's Jekyll and Hyde. I never thought he'd be like this with me with money. I can't believe the way he's treating the children towards me. He's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And you guys have found a key to something much bigger than just assets. You're talking about parental alienation. You're talking about what I say, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You're referring to narcissistic personalities. You're referring to monsters. You're referring to the court system that often supports the Dr. and Jekyll Hyde approach, but they only know Mr. Hyde. They don't know Mr. Jekyll. They only see Mr. Hyde, who's the monster, not Mr. Jekyll, who I was married to and I loved in the beginning. Okay, he's changed. He's now Mr. Hyde, and we've seen him develop. And even if he didn't develop, he's controlling the purse strings, and I don't get any money for monthly expenses. He reneges on it. He gives more money to the girlfriend. He pays the legal fees. He won't pay my legal fees. So it's a whole thing that morphs into what your topic is, financial fraud. All of these things are the undermining factors in financial fraud. And the reason it's morphing more into financial fraud is that as the divorce continues and women are distracted by issues of children and worrying about money and the way the guy's behaved, I can't believe the way he's behaved, he's starting to commit crimes. He's starting to violate the law, not civil law in the divorce. We thought everything was civil. We didn't think of ever going criminally, but he's a criminal. He's money laundering. He's involved in wire and mail fraud, bank fraud. He's possibly in conspiracy to defraud. So those things, I'm not making this up. What I see in the remedies I use to recover money, divorce is now equal to investment fraud, bank fraud, Ponzi's, pyramid schemes, every kind of fraud you can possibly think in. Take divorce out of the civil area and it's being moved into the criminal area. I haven't done that. The remedies for recovering money have done it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So John, talking about this, and you've perhaps touched on this already, but you've had experience in multiple countries and jurisdictions dealing with issues of hidden assets in divorce cases. Can you give us your opinion on how the judicial system worldwide treats women overall and why? Do you think it's got anything to do with systemic male entitlement?
Yeah, I think if you, looking at my social science background, which is political science, history, geography, culture, religion studies, demographics. Let's take 271 countries. In most countries, women are second-class citizens. In some countries, you can murder a woman if she threatens to go to divorce court. That's how bad things are. Let's talk a little bit about, I don't work in most of those third world countries. I would never even get involved in a case in Brazil or in Indonesia or in Muslim countries where women are often treated in the court system as livestock. So that answers part of your question. In Western society, it's also been true. Look at women in the United States have only been allowed to vote since the 1920s, Warren Harding. So women's role, especially in the financial area, has been down. It's coming up because more women are doctors, lawyers, professionals, more women live alone. You have advocates in the gay community, especially women that are independent, that control their own finances, but they often have the same issues with their female spouses. But the settlements are usually quicker. In Western society, the law is quite different. In Ireland, which has had the Catholic Church on their back for a long time, sorry, I'm a fallen away Catholic, but women are moving into their own. In England and France, in Switzerland, Germany, women take a predominant role. In divorce situations, in Spain, Portugal, and Italy, it's still horrific. The man has the advantage, the lawyer makes sure he has the advantage, and women are constantly victimized. And I've had courses in Italy and Spain where the women lose no matter what kind of evidence they have about the husband hiding assets. So I do think, however, you're asking a question, you didn't say civil or criminal. I think you were meaning civil. So I gave you an answer civilly. Let me give you an answer criminally. When you file a criminal complaint, it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman. Women have just as much rights in the criminal area of accusing a husband of conspiracy. And whether you use an MLAT or Anton Pillar, you can seize money, and the court doesn't look whether you're a woman or a man. It does in the civil area, and that's what happens. Lawyers often have to drain you of money. You don't get anywhere, whether it's in Canada or Switzerland or France. So criminal to me is the most advantageous for a woman to seek assets.
Thank you. That's a great answer. Karen.
One of the fundamental problems in family court is the lawyers and judges not demanding document disclosure in a timely manner with severe consequences for non-compliance. And I know a friend of mine, she's been dragged through the courts. She's just still, it's not even wrapped up yet. She's been dragged through the courts for over 10 years. And her ex-husband has never provided, complete and accurate financial disclosure ever. What, in your opinion, could be done about this?
Yeah, it's a good question. I see it all the time. And you're talking about two E's, enforcement and education. Let's talk about enforcement. In civil courts, there's very little enforcement. Your lawyer that is trying to get the documents for you has very little power or recourse. He has almost no recourse to get enforcement from a judge. Even if he gets along with the spouse's lawyer is often put in a bad position because he can't even force his own client to turn over documents. I mean, he doesn't have the moral ability to resign, which he should do, but he stays in there working for the client, but he doesn't really help the situation at all. He's kind of a co-conspirator, if you ask me. He could do a little bit more and put a little bit more pressure on the spouse. He doesn't do it. Then when you go to the judge, and you're seeking contempt, the judge kind of throws his arms up and he doesn't want to be unfair. Well, unfair, he's being unfair to the spouse that wants the documents. That's all about education. The judges are not educated, okay? And I've seen it again and again in these phases. First, I supply information as to assets, the bank account, the wire transfers, and so on. Then they say, John, get the documents. Well, in Canada and the United States, the only way, I'm just a humble investigator. The only way to get the documents is for the lawyer to subpoena the documents, okay? Many lawyers don't want to subpoena the documents. Sometimes the opposing counsel and the spouse blocks the documents. They put a gatekeeper on the bank account, okay? They can do that, okay? It's illegal, but they do it, okay? Nobody cares about that. Nobody is your champion. Your lawyer isn't your champion, the opposing lawyer, and worse, the judge isn't. So even if the judge says, look at Mr. Smith, we've asked you 20 times to turn over your tax records, your P&L and your balance sheets, and your damn bank statements, and why don't you do it? I'm going to file contempt against you. Contempt goes on. It's almost unenforceable. Nobody goes to jail in civil court cases on contempt.
Mm-hmm.
Spend a lot more money. You tell your lawyer, isn't contempt a charge? Shouldn't he turn it over? Basically, nothing happens. That's the reason more and more women are getting frustrated with the system. They're paying out tremendous amounts of legal bills. They're not even getting to the point of a divorce settlement. They're going to get their butts kicked at the final settlement, they know. So they're going into the criminal area. And usually, if that guy that's refusing to turn over the documents that you mentioned, he's probably somehow also violating the law. That's what you have to look at. Mm-hmm. And that's where you get into making a criminal charge much tougher against contempt or even fraudulent transfer. So John, the best I'd say is the court system usually is not your friend.
No. And clearly, if you've got a spouse who is not disclosing documents, it's for a reason. They're hiding
for a reason,
right? It's a no-brainer.
Absolutely.
So John, can you tell us from the least serious to the most serious, please give us a description of the 5 most prevalent financial fraud charges that occur in divorce cases. So what's the least serious, and explain what it is, and then go, give us the top 5.
Well, I think the least serious would be for an average person, a working class person that violates the law by lying, not turning over documents, and moving money, okay, to a relative or a family friend or a new LLC. Okay, it's very tough to prosecute somebody on that because it's not a lot of money. I'll give you an example of a case I just finished. I was in Miami last week and I spent a day in Nassau. I have a client who has spent $300,000 with a lawyer in the Bahamas, and he can't even get a subpoena out of a Canadian bank. It exists. I went to the bank, I went to the company registry, all the information is there, and he basically ripped her off. Okay, now let me get to the point where the husband has really ripped her off. And these so-called professionals have not helped her. She's been ripped off by forensic accountants, lawyers, investigators, lawyers in another Caribbean island, and she has spent millions of dollars, not hundreds of thousands, and 90% of the information has been fabricated, partly because the husband, who is very rich, has paid off the people. We know that for a fact. Mm-hmm. He has taken $16 million. He is a money launderer. He is a criminal, and he's crushed the woman by paying off people, by making her jump to different lawyers who were not that tough and afraid of him. He hires a big law firm.
Mhm.
She received a substantial settlement, and he's an experienced money launderer. The only way you defeat somebody like that is by international law enforcement, accusing him of money laundering and other crimes. And I'm starting to see this more and more. And let me make a point why. From the 1950s to about the 1990s, most people were on the same plane. There were a few very, very wealthy people, but most people were average people making $50,000 to $250,000 a year, and that was a very good income. Today, people are making millions and millions of dollars. There's more prosperity. And when you have more prosperity, you can cheat, bribe, and hide money more. There's more prosperity all over the world, whether it's Africa or Asia or Russia. You've seen all the Russian oligarchs, and Putin has a $700 million yacht, not a $70 million yacht, a $700 million yacht. So Canada has many, many wealthy people, and they know the system. They know the criminal system is weak. They know the civil system is even weaker. In the United States, we have a very draconian U.S. attorney system, but they don't want to prosecute divorce cases. There's so many other fraud cases. In Europe, there's tremendous prosperity. How do you think these banking countries started? Started first with Switzerland in the 1890s. Now you have Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, Gibraltar, Cyprus, Isle of Man, Guernsey, Jersey. You have the Cook Islands. You used to have Hong Kong and Macau and Bahamas. They're no longer banking systems. You have Mauritius. So those countries decided, we want to take in the world's money, and they're taking in hundreds and hundreds of billions of legitimate money and criminal money. And it's very hard to sort that money out because it's so layered in secrecy. Mm-hmm. Divorce is the new area where people are hiding money.
So John, you think your latest technology, or the latest technology, is there any location left in the world where someone could hide assets that you could not find?
No, there's no place, because let's go back. I'm going to say this in my speech at the American Bar. I said, look, I'm old enough. I'm before the fax. I'm before the computer. I'm before Facebook. I'm before a cell phone. I had, excuse me, I had a telex in my office. People don't know what that is. I got stock reports every day, financial reports. It was a big machine. Nobody knows what a telex is. When I lived in France, I had a Minitel. Do you remember the Minitel?
No.
Or no? Okay, it was a little black box and you could find anybody. It was before the internet, okay? I worked in an IBM typewriter for 25 years. What happened? Fiber optics came in, linked to a computer, linked to databases. All that information now can be gained through the computer. It's no longer just human intelligence. I don't have to go into a Swiss bank and recruit somebody to give me documents. 20 years ago, if I did that, they'd arrest me. They'd call the police for violating Swiss banking law. There's no more Swiss banking law, thanks to the Canadians. There's no more Swiss banking law. But now, all that information can be obtained off the computer. If I want to find something, I don't have to go to Panama, Bermuda. I don't have to go to certain places. I still have to go to Guernsey. I have to go to Cyprus. But if you have a computer and there's a database, you can obtain anything off that, including documents. So there's no place, maybe some places in Borneo or maybe in parts of Africa, but they're all getting computers too.
Mm-hmm. John, thank you so much. Kim and I would like to thank you, John, for the invaluable information in helping women to get their fair share of the marital assets and educate, the process. So your information is truly appreciated. And if our listeners would like to contact John to hire him to help you get your assets, he can be emailed at IRGglobal@AOL.com. And we'll make sure that we post the information below as well. Kim?
Thank you very much. I have one final note we were going to say.
Yes.
I was going to say, John, last word, please.
I think since there's so much money in divorce cases, so much money being moved overseas, you have to be extremely careful because there's fraud in the fraud business. You have to really evaluate your lawyer. You have to really do a due diligence on him. You have to really evaluate your investigator because they also want to keep the case going. They don't like to reveal sources. Sometimes you can tell that the source is at a SWIFT or at Euroclear. That's no big secret. You don't have to look, you don't have to identify their source in Italy if he's a former intelligence officer. But there's fraud in the divorce cases with investigators and lawyers. And the other thing is, before you hire a forensic accountant, make sure you have all your paperwork so the forensic accountant can help you measure a fraud.
Right.
Thank
And forensic accountant can only measure what he has. If he doesn't have all the document disclosure, then he's not going to be able to give you an overall picture of what kind of fraud is taking place, right?
Right, and just to summarize, you're looking for bank applications, bank documents, customer service records, wire logs, emails, instructions to the bank, and signature cards. You have to get those either out of your spouse or out of an investigator to prove to a judge that's where his money is.
Thank you. And John, I can't help but ask this last question. In the cases that you have dealt with, and many of them are high net worth individuals, how often do you see the lawyers part of the financial fraud?
I see it in several ways. I do see it. I see it in incompetence. I see that over a long period of time, they get burned out, nothing to do with money. And then I see the lawyer designing a system to keep the case going. We have to do a new filing. I better depose him. I better depose her. I better depose that guy. I better depose that guy. That's how they make money. They're a business. You're going to them as a lawyer to solve your problem emotionally, financially, and with the children. They're looking at you, whether you're a $50,000 case or $1 million case. They are a business to make money. So you have to evaluate not just their ability in court, but their ethics and their morality. It's not easy to do, but you have to take the time to do it.
One of the things that I hear is that the narcissists or abusers attract abusive, in many cases, they attract abusive lawyers. And I know I've experienced that myself. I really think that the lawyer was, the alienation and the abuse was already happening, but he just took it to a whole other level. Financial extortion, just tons of criminal activity.
Yes, I've had a case in Palm Beach in which if the wife and the man got together, like one lawyer recommended, the guy fired, it was a man, he fired the lawyer I recommended. In the end, they lost all their equity. The lawyer drained them. They lost all the equity in the house because of the high legal bills, and they could have settled it for something like $30,000. And in the end, the legal bills were $500,000 and they lost their house in Boca Raton.
It's amazing.
It
So
goes
sad.
on and on and on. And
Yes.
There's no control over the lawyer. There is no morality in these cases.
Exactly. Thank you again so much for joining us. Sorry, Kim, go
My
ahead.
pleasure.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, John, Karen. That's it for Pop the Red Pill. Thank you for joining us, and we'll be back next week with another amazing guest to lift the veil on parental alienation. Thank you.